I am Sumit Kumar Sarma, Assistant Section Officer, and on behalf of the Ministry of Housing Affairs, I am privileged and honored to welcome you all to the 18th Urban Mobility Indian Conference-cum-Exhibition 2025. This roundtable session is on emissions from mobility other than the tailpipe. And the session is being graciously chaired by Dr. S.D. Atri, Member Technical, CAQM. He has more than 33 years of experience in management and supervision of meteorological observations and services, establishment of environmental monitoring networks, air quality monitoring, modeling and management, climate change, urban meteorology, agrometeorology, and international activities. Joining him as co-chairperson is Professor Ashish Verma, Transportation System, Department of Civil Engineering, IISc, Bangalore, who has done his PhD from IIT Bombay and has authored more than 290 research publications, including more than 130 journal publications in the area of sustainable transportation. He is also founding president of International Group on Sustainable Transportation and Livability, and is presently serving as steering and scientific committee member of World Conference on Transport Research Society. Guiding the discussion as the moderator is Dr. Himani Jain. She has a keen interest in accessible streets, safe transport, and urban planning. At the council, her research is geared towards building connections between emerging technologies, travel behavior patterns, and land use. She has over 20 years of experience in land use and transport planning, road safety, participatory approaches, campaigns, and business solution development. To begin the session, I am honored to request the moderator, Dr. Himani Jain, to graciously guide the proceeding of the session. Please, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and we are really grateful. Welcome all the panelists. I'm Himani, and to start the session, everyone is waiting first to hear the thoughts of Dr. Atri. Sir, we would like you to help set the context of the today's session.
Thank you. Good morning to all of you, my fellow colleagues, panelists, participants from all over the country, for which we have gathered today on a very important topic, emissions from mobility other than tailpipes. You may be aware that everybody is concerned with the air pollution, and particularly in the Indo-Gangetic plains. And when comes the winter, more hue and cry starts. Air quality is not up to that mark in most part of the countries. We need to take specific actions. And remember two buzzwords. If we can solve those two issues, we can solve the air quality problem in a great way. Dhool and dhua. Dhool mean particularly from emissions or pollutants coming from PM10 and particularly during summer seasons. And dhua mean PM2.5, which is more dangerous and coming from the vehicles, coming from the biomass burning, coming from the industries as well as these thermal power plants. So these two, if we can control, more than 60-70% of the pollution in Delhi NCR can be controlled. And one thing, remember that when we take air quality, it's function of the two aspects, X and Y. Y comes to the meteorology. We have no control over the meteorology or climatology. But only option left with us is reduction of the emissions. We have to reduce the emissions to control the air quality. Emissions coming from any source, maybe transport, maybe road dust, maybe the industries, DG sets, power plants, and so on and so forth. So we will be mainly discussing what are the emissions, particularly dust particles and others, tire wears, then resuspension of the dust, and all other sources. We'll discuss those things in details. A couple of the things like we need to know what are the trade-offs exist for exhaust and non-exhaust emissions. and what are the source left us. When we talk of the Viksit Bharat, it should be Viksit in all the aspects. विकसित का मतलब ये होना चाहिए whether it is air quality, it is environment, it is sustainability, removal of the poverty. Viksit mean Viksit. And when we talk of the particularly transport sector, zero emission vehicles, that is the future. Because number of vehicles are increasing day by day. Definitely, when population is increasing, and when we talk particularly of the Indo-Gangetic Plains or Delhi NCR, Delhi contains only 1500 square kilometers of the area, less than 2% of the area of the NCR, and 50% of the vehicles in this small area. Huge population pressure, huge vehicle pressure. So all these issues needs to be discussed in detail. Many times we discussed with our partner, Kiev is helping CAQM in particular transport sectors and other particular dust from the roads and the construction activities. CAQM is very recent body, I should say, only 4.5 years old, established in 2021 April, with the mandate that air quality of the NCR region needs to be improved on a permanent basis. You take any actions, you issue any direction. So far, Commission has issued 94 direction and 17 advisory in different sectors, industries, BDG, so those are enforceable, but still lots more to be done, and we need new innovations. And one thing I want to share with you that many experts, they are part of the CAQM in one way, in one subcommittee or other committees or part of the commission. But many experts, they are left all over the country, maybe the government, maybe in the universities, NGOs, research organizations. We have initiated a program, Sudh Vayu Network, called SUVAS. All details are on our website, where anybody can join there and can provide his innovative ideas so that we can use those ideas to issue directions and implement in this. Remember just one thing, I again repeating that this is very complex region. Sometimes people talk of Beijing and London. Kindly compare the even wind speed, meteorology of that place. Such type of the emissions which is existing in Delhi and NCR, if it is in say Mumbai or it is in Chennai, we have lots of land and sea breeze. But particularly during winter, winds become calm, mixing height becomes almost zero, maybe 50 meters from the 4,500 meters in summer seasons. And variation of the air quality is from 50 to 500 in this region. Whatever actions we take, definitely still there will be lots of variations. We can't control meteorology, I also mentioned. But purpose of this type of the discussions is that we need to lower down these bars. Say variation may be from the say 10, 20 to 200. This year luckily has been very good year up to so far. We have not seen even a single severe days. From the 1st January itself, see this AQI never crossed 400, it is below that. Even PM10, PM2.5 bearing 2020, they are lowest in the region. But we can't be complacent. I mentioned that vehicles will keep on increasing. What options we should take? How to control this dust particularly? And last point I just want to share that CAQM has released or prepared a framework for redevelopment of the roads. What type of the roads should be there? How new roads as well as old road, they will should be made, end-to-end paving or greening, and what should be the total length of the road, and then length of the median. All these things, they are in this framework. And we have asked the state governments to follow this, and 9 cities around Delhi, they have been identified for implementing this framework to start with. And we have asked them that you come out with the plans as well as financial commitment. Without financial commitment, there is no meaning of the plan. We'll listen from all of you, and definitely I'm hopeful that from today's table, new ideas will emerge so that we can implement for improving the air quality. Thank you. I stop here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for the apt words to set the context. We will follow through your advice. We have Professor Verma to co-chair the session. Professor Verma, you have worked extensively, not only on modeling side, but also on the micro level detailed projects, right? Extensive data and extensive insights from there. So what is it that you want to say before we start the discussion on how do we look at the non-exhaust emissions, because the entire focus keeps going to the exhaust emissions in the transport sector, unfortunately. So how do we, get away from that to have a more comprehensive look?
Thank you. Thank you, Imani. It's really my pleasure and honor to co-chair the session with Ratriji. And he has already set the context very comprehensively and clearly. And of course, it's always a pleasure, having my dear colleague Himani moderating the session. It's a very important, interesting topic, and less researched and less understood with less data. Because our focus has been predominantly on tailpipe emissions, but these are kind of behind the scene and invisible, less understood aspects of emissions from transport and mobility, but other than tailpipe. I think road dust, tire dust, these aspects are related in some way to the infrastructure. We did some data collection also about the exposure level of pollutants when we are doing study. We use the personal air quality monitor, to basically collect data at different times of the day, not just on Church Street, but also using different modes where our volunteers were coming from different areas in the city and traveling in metro, in bus, in taxi, in auto rickshaw, walking, and so on. And interesting results were found, especially in terms of spatio-temporal variation, because these pollutants can also have a lot of variations. Interestingly, when in the morning you have the manual street grooming, it also generates a lot of PM10, and many times when you do morning walk, you might realize that whether I am breathing fresh air or much more polluted air. So I think this spatial temporal variations are extremely important to understand, and hopefully we'll get better insight as we have the panel discussions. With this remarks, I'll close. Thank you.
So you have left a lot of space for asking more questions later to you, and we are not going to leave that. In the interest of time, we have a quick context-setting presentation by my colleague, Dr. Arpan Patra, and this is in no way a comprehensive commentary or has elaborate recommendations, but the presentation sets a context with more questions that we have been observing. So that's where I think we expect the experts and the other dignitaries in the room to also reflect on that. How do we answer some of those questions? Arpan, you have about 5-7 minutes.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Myself, Arpan Patra. Before starting the presentation, how many of us have actually visited the nearest CACM site today? And how many of us know what are the PM levels right now we are actually inhaling? Yeah. Actually, these are the usual suspects that I basically thought of before posing this question. As most of us coming from a urban mobility background, we might not have seen what PM 2.5 or what beyond PM 2.5 or beyond exhaust emission means. Okay, in the next 5-7 minutes of my presentations, I have divided my whole discussion into 3 major pointers. Number 1, when we are not talking about tailpipe emissions, what are we missing? Number 2, what does it mean if we include the non-exhaust emission as well in our mobility discussion in the interest of, let's say, next 5 years? In 2030, how does it look like exhaust and non-exhaust bifurcations? And number 3, as we are technical experts, how can we improve the estimates? What are the different kind of factors that we can basically think of? What are the different kind of studies that we can think of? What technologies means in terms of reducing non-exhaust emissions? Before going into details, so as I mentioned, we are from CEW, Council on Energy, Environment and Water. This year, CEW completed its 15th year, and we use data, integrated analysis, and strategic outreach to explain, change, the reuse, and misuse of resources. We are 380 plus researchers working in 15 sub-teams. We work either in transformations, enablers, and how to improve the quality of life for a sustainable change. So first, as I was mentioning, what does it mean? What are the different sources? So as I mentioned today, they are the PM 2.5 levels are around 115 at Manesar, and PM10 levels are around 200. That is around 2 to 3% higher than what national ambient standards are. Then what is polluting this air? So CW in 2019 has actually identified top 5 sources and estimated from different emission inventories what are the different type of emission sources that we are having. Now, it actually depends what type of pollutant you are talking about and what sector you are talking about. Now, if you are talking about an particulate matter, as it is concerned for all the Indian cities, we are mostly talking about PM 2.5 and PM 10. Now, if you're talking about PM10, road dust is one of the major contributor, and if you're talking about PM 2.5, then transport is one of the major contributor, that is the tailpipe emissions. Now, having said so, you can see there is a lot of uncertainties in the assumptions or lots of uncertainties in the estimates that we are basically right now have. All the estimate that we did, the upper panel is basically showing what are the contribution of road dust in PM 2.5 and PM 10 coming from different emission inventory studies. And the lower panel is showing basically what are the contribution of PM 2.5 and PM 10 from the tailpipe emissions. Now you can see in PM 2.5, all of us have uncertainties, but the problem is the uncertainties basically depends on what are the different type of activity data we are using. Let's say if I'm talking about transport tailpipe emissions, sometimes we use what is the actual vehicle stock that we are currently facing. Some of the estimates are having what are the total number of vehicles registered right now, and also for different vehicle segments, with what are the activities they are happening, what are the different type of activities they are currently considering. Based on that, this estimate actually varies. And also, if we go for PM10, you can see the uncertainties are more. Even the uncertainties also changes for road dust than the transport emissions. So there is some level of assumptions that we are basically using across different cities, which are actually making the case more worse when you are talking about beyond tailpipe emissions. This is a compilation that we did in 2020, so in response to that, we have a national clean air program that is launched in 2019 with a target that the PM10 levels will be decreased by at least 40% from the 2017 baseline. And all the 131 cities were basically asked to put different kind of clean air action plans across sectors. And if you see of all the plans, 40% of the plans were regarding the transport-related emission reduction, and 10 to 15% were for reducing road dust. So that's mean we are somehow addressing, it's not something new that has recently come up. We have started addressing it before. And not only that, if you see the money that we have, funds that we have already used for of the NCAP fund, 64% of the total NCAP fund, that is around 10,000 of the total 10,000 crore NCAP funds, have been used for road dust, which is almost 5 times of the funds used on the transport sector. Still, road dust currently is a problem, and if I give you our Delhi related figures, so Delhi had already used 33% of its NCAP fund for road dust. Now, still, why we have gathered here and why we haven't still haven't addressed the road dust yet? That might be, this is an important plot where we can showing whenever we are talking about road dust related action plan, what are the different action plans we are talking about. So I have compiled all the NCAP cities and have identified and have reviewed what are their action plans when it comes to solving road dust. The road dust related action plans are majorly divided into 6 to 7 categories. Now, first, use of dust resuspension, that we actually see the people, the water sprinklers. Then second, regular cleaning of dust, green cover, increasing green cover, road infrastructure improvement, pavement of roads, most of the cities talking about pavement of roads, and regulating the construction activities. Also, there are certain activities related to truck loading, unloading guidelines and all, some cities have reviewed. But what I want to bring your attention on, this pavement of roads have already been there, and it is the most used kind of or most cited kind of action plan across the construction, across the road dust mitigation measures, which might have led to that much of use or consumption of NCAP funds for the road dust related interventions. Then still we haven't solved the non-exhaust emissions, because if I want to define what road dust is, the road dust majorly coming from 2 different sources. Number one, there are construction activities happening. There are some piping activities or excavations. They are actually giving us some road dust. And also, this dust when come to on roads, due to movement of the vehicle, it got resuspended. And it also contributes to the overall traffic non-exhaust emissions. Excluding that, there are road abrasion, brake and tire are also, which actually contributes to the overall non-exhaust emissions that we basically currently see. And there are some studies which are claiming that around 40 to 90% of PM10 are basically due to transport related non-exhaust emissions, and some studies are also claiming of PM2.5, 40 to 80% are due to transport related non-exhaust emissions. If you see some of the Indian studies, in Delhi only, there is a study in 2018 which has actually mapped all the silt loading and non-exhaust emissions from the different parts of Delhi, and it actually said around in overall transport PM emission, around 86% is coming from non-exhaust and 14% is coming from exhaust emissions. So that means whenever we are talking about non-exhaust emission or transport related PM emission reduction, we are actually leaving off a major chunk which comes in the terms of resuspension or which comes in terms of non-exhaust emissions. Yeah. Then so what we can do actually to solve it? So there is another CW 2020 study where we have identified, if we keep on increasing the way that we are if we keep on increasing the total vehicle stock, or if we increase the high public, or if we keep on getting higher number of private vehicles, that vehicle stock will increase from a 2016 baseline to 2030, it will increase by 7 times. But if we have enough public transport support, enough NMT support, so that this percentage can reduce by at least 57%, that means the on-road stock with high public vehicle support can reduce by 57% from its BU number by 2030 from a 2016 baseline. This is one of the points, basically, if we want to reduce whether it's exhaust or whether it's non-exhaust emission, if you want to reduce overall transport emissions, we have to somehow reduce or restrict the number of private vehicles on road and restrict the number of private trips that we are currently happening. Now, till there, I have basically highlighted what we have done till now for addressing non-exhaust emissions. Now let's understand how non-exhaust emissions basically being measured. So for a non-exhaust emissions, if you see the EVA CPA AP42 method, there are three major factors which basically drive your non-exhaust conversations. Number one, what is the total number of rainy days that you have in a year or have in an average period of time? That is completely beyond that is completely not mobility related interventions can basically solve. Second, there is silt loading, which is dependent on what is the on-road silt or on-road loose soil that whenever a vehicle passes, that will actually resuspend, and it has a higher weightage when it's come to resuspension related calculations. Now, on the left side in the panel, I have given you what is the total silt loading and different cities of Delhi, different roads of Delhi, and and it typically comes 0.22 microgram gram per meter square whenever it comes to major of Delhi roads. This is an average silt loading that we can see in Delhi roads. Now, the second thing that I want to bring your attention on, that is the vehicle weight. Now, there is a common understanding that with increase the electric vehicle, as we increase the number of electric vehicles, the vehicle weight also increases. If we increase the vehicle weight by 10 to 15%, then the vehicle resuspension factor, emission factor for non-exhaust resuspension also increases by 2 times. So in that way, if we calculate what is the total number of Delhi's on-road, total number of Delhi's transport emissions divided by non-exhaust and exhaust, you can see 9.7 kiloton per year is basically the non-exhaust emissions, which is actually around 80% of the total transport emissions that we can see, and 7 kiloton per year is basically exhaust emissions. Even in the non-exhaust emission, you can see the major percentage is due to the resuspension, or that is the silt loading that's happening on the road. And several others are due to road abrasion, brake wear and tire wear. If we add these three also, which is basically dependent on the vehicle or dependent on the particular, what are the mobility interventions we can do. So that also add up to something equally to overall exhaust emissions. So if we just leave the non-exhaust part, we are actually leaving around 50% of the discussion from the plot or from the estimate that we have did. And if, as Delhi is already planning to increase different segments, the electrification is also increasing. And if right now, as per our model estimates, there are right now around 2.3 lakh of electric vehicles, which will be around 7.5 lakhs in 2030, in the next 5 years, with the different vehicle segments are increased electrification trends following different trends. We can see the private vehicles, all the vehicles, in all the vehicle segments, this electrification penetration will happen, and it will happen at a larger rate, around a 4 to 5% per year increase. So that means whenever whenever we are talking about electric vehicles being heavier than the ICE counterpart, we have to also reconsider whether it is a win or a loss from a non-exhaust emission perspective. Having said so, and this will not change in the coming 5 years also. If you see the total emission that's happening right now in 2025, total non-exhaust plus exhaust emissions, total emissions coming from transport will increase around 11%, and due to majorly driven by the increase in non-exhaust emissions. If you see the relative percentages, most of this due to coming from the private vehicles, and 60 to 65% of the non-exhaust emissions are contributed by the private vehicle uses, and due to the heavier and speedier vehicles and coming into the picture, the emission numbers and the non-exhaust emission contributions will also keep on rising. So there, till now, I covered the second part, like if we reduce the if we don't consider the non-exhaust emission, what we are basically missing. Last, what are the existing gaps in the estimate? Whatever, as sir was also mentioning there, this is very less understood, this is very less data available and less research. So there are 5 major gaps that we have identified. Number one, do we have enough real world data? The answer for me is no, because we haven't done any kind of research like how with the change in the vehicle brake padding, with the change in the tire chemistry, how the overall emission factor can going to change. Is the equation does actually holds for India true from the USAPA models? How can we modify? Is there any standard method? So again, so we are right now, their standard method is available, but the methods can also vary depending on the factors that you are using. So this is partially yes. Now third point is, are the non-exhaust emission factors up to date? No, because with the change in tires, with the change in brake padding and the road surfaces, as we are also mentioning, I think Swagata will also tell something about tire chemistry. So these non-exhaust emission factors are not up to dated. It needs to be up to dated. And lastly, I will club these 2 points. So are we modeling the resuspension, or are we actually, do we know how the resuspension, how much is coming from due to the vehicle resuspending the dust, or how much is coming due to the different activities or construction activities happening there. So there we don't have any particular chemical marker which will actually tell us how much basically will is coming from vehicular exhaust, non-exhaust, and how much is basically coming from the other activities happening, because silica is the common marker for both of them, and we can't basically apportion what percentage is coming from what type of activities. That's how I want to end. Over to you, Man.
Thank you. Thanks, Arpan. So just very quickly, I want to jump into the discussion, but a very, very brief introduction to our esteemed experts and panelists here. We have Swagata De, who's a policy specialist and looks into air quality policy and outreach at C-STEP, and has been working on the transportation and related sector for a while. Other than that, we have Megha Kumar from ICCT. Megha, thank you for being here, and we look forward to knowing more on this. We have Namita from Ayurveda. Ayurveda provides comprehensive and affordable air quality monitoring solutions for both indoor and outdoor. Namita, welcome here. Welcome here. Yeah, she's here. And then we have Dr. Sunil Gulia, who's a senior scientist at CSIR NIRI. Sir, very, very welcome to the panel, and we look forward to knowing more about the models from you. We have Professor Sanjay Gupta from SPA. He needs no introduction. So everybody knows him, sir. Thank you for finding time to be here. Other than that, we have Mr. Mahinder Kumar, Director, NCRTC. So thank you for finding time, and we want to know about the projects and infrastructure projects that you have been handling. We have Mr. Rajneesh Ahuja, Head of the Urban Transport and Urban Development team at AFD. So very, very welcome here, and we want to know how best practices can be brought in here. So before I jump into the discussion, there are 3-4 key questions that have been raised by Arpan in his presentation. One is, of course, around how well are we collecting data, and what is the emission model standardized methodologies that can be adopted. And then within it, there are several questions. What are the factors, whether factors are Indianized enough? What are the recent changes into the vehicle-related, tires, brake pads and others, whether those have substantially been taken care of in the emission factors and others. And then there is a whole, this thing about where there is a lot of dependence upon the IMD data, right? So what is the resuspension in a particular context, in a local situation, and how well our models are integrated and how well are those data available? So there is a level of technical expertise that is needed, a modeling expertise that is needed, right? But then there is a separate next layer of questions where we are trying to figure out how big or how geographically big area is the impact. Are we talking about very local at a neighborhood level? Are we talking about at a city level? Are we talking about at a airshed level? Right, so much beyond my city, some that I can handle in the city, but some I can't. So that is the next tier of questions where we want to know and understand things. And then it all has to go towards a strategy and solutions. At the end of the day, does every city need to model things? Are there things or strategies or recommendations which have a pattern, and then cities can jump right into solutions? Because at the end of the day, there are so many NCAP cities who are looking at a solution with lesser rigorous modeling that can be, getting into it. So it's a kind of a trade-off and a balance where how the academia and think tank and the research bodies are looking at things, but then how the implementing agencies and the decision makers need to figure out the strategic solutions. So hopefully the whole discussion leads to both the sides. How do we go about it? Professor Dr. Gulia, we want to start with you. So what is the available robust studies in the last some 5-7 years that can be appropriately used, and that gives good insights on the current modeling efforts, and whether we have clear connection on where the sources are and how do we tackle them in the interim, in the short-term measures. What do we do?
Hello. Thank you, Himani. Yes, it's not from last 4 and 5. Studies are regularly going on and conducted in the past, starting with the CPCB study in 2010, which is done by my own institute, CSR Niri Nagpur. And that is a very first studies and very comprehensively. But that time, the focus was only on PM10, and it was clear that the major contributor is the non-tailpipe emissions, this resuspension of the road dust. That time the conditions of the roads are, Then after that, there is a study in 2016 by IIT Kanpur, focusing mainly on Delhi, and they included PM2.5, and they again found that the dominant source of PM10 and 2.5 is the road dust. Then again in 2018, there is another study considering few cities of NCR, including Delhi, and that is done by ARAI and TERI in 2018. And they also dominantly find out this resuspension of the road dust is one of the dominant source. But comparatively, the absolute number is different, but it is the ranked one in all sources. Now, after that, there are few more studies has been done. In the COVID period, there was gap, but still there are studies are coming. Recently, we have done one study with Commission, and they have supported this study and also guided us during the course of the studies. And this study, we have clearly marked that how the emissions from the exhaust as well as emissions from the resuspension of the road dust is quantifying and how they are contributing to the nearby CAQMS. So we did this through the emission inventory plus dispersion modeling, and suggested a comprehensive strategies how we should proceed if we really reduce the PM10 and 2.5 within the cities. And I think outcome of that study is, as sir said, that a road dust management plan and framework has been going to be implemented by the different agencies for the pavement and greenery, and the new one more outcome is coming from the use of MRS and road cleaning practices coming in the future.
So in your understanding, since there is a wide variation, like one of the graphs that Arpan showed, are there better ways in the modeling or in the emission factors that can help converge some of the ranges that we see?
Yes, in that case, I think we should go with both the approach. When we use some of these regional or transboundary pollutions, we need some different scale model. But when we do within the cities, so we go with the local studies, identifying the air pollution hotspots, and with the EDF spot, we have done one more studies. And you can see that when you see Delhi map and there is a 40 stations, you find within the 1 or 2 kilometers, if there is any stations, they have a huge variations. So if any transboundary source is contributing in the overall double burning or other thermal power plant which is located 100 kilometers away, if it is contributed, it contributes all over Delhi as uniformly. But here you can see the difference within 1 or 2 kilometers. There is a huge difference in the AQI level. So that is only the local sources are impacting. And again, the locations of the CAQMS and monitoring stations, it is directly influenced by any source or not. That also need to be checked. So again, I said that we need local scale model as well as regional scale model. So in the local, the air mode and all these regulatory model are well worked, validated for our Indian conditions. And for regional WRF and all these are models available. And I think we have now a good expertise in India to carry out these modeling systems.
Perfect. So in these studies and by your assessment, meta-assessment of these studies, what are the top 2-3 recommendations for the cities to manage the non-exhaust emissions at the first level in the
Yes.
interim today?
Yes, thank you for asking this question. And I'll just brief the recommendation which we have suggested along with the CAQM in our recent study, which is just completed in 4, 5, 6 months before. So I think in the road dust management, first we need not to go directly to the solutions. Let's see the road condition, not on the table, just go and visit, the experts should visit and map it properly. Means there are, we can map it easily by categorize silt content. If it's a high silt content, we can say it's a poor road, poor conditioned road. If it is a good silt content, very less, then we can say it's a less polluting road or something. We can make it, do the geotagging properly through GIS and all, and then that map can be shared with the urban local bodies and decision makers, and then tell them that how this different colored map, like poor is, we can say, make a red and clean is a green, how we can make it red to green, the whole city, and that kind of mapping should be required. And once we have done that, then we go to the solutions. And in that solution, if there is a problem with the broken roads, unpaved roads, so no need to put the MRS or any dust suppressant, first need to be prepared and do it the pavement. So that prioritization is required. If still there is a resuspension is there, deposition of the dust is there, then we can only go with the second option, lifting of that dust from the road. So that there is a various methods is available. And in the third option, if still there is any resuspension and all, then we need to apply some kind of sprinkling systems or dust suppressants applications. But that should be the last priorities. Yeah. So these are the 3 steps or recommendation we can suggest.
So we are going to come back to you with more questions on airshed. So
Sure.
Agata, help us understand that while these recommendations are clearer, and when you look at the hundreds of clean air action plans submitted by the NCAP cities, these has been done. There has been enough emphasis on that. Has there been any measured impact studies on these improvements using some of the vehicles that are cleaning the roads and the end-to-end pavement? These are the 2 biggest funded items in the CCAP plans, right?
Thanks, Himani. Short answer is no. But the longer, so first of all, if you look at only NCAP does not measure impacts matched to sectors. It looks at overall change in air quality. So does not matter what all you've done as long as there is an overall change in air quality, and then good air days, bad air days. That's how that has happened is not mentioned. Having said that, how does one measure sectoral impacts? And that is, you need regular updation of emission inventories. Most of our emission inventories right now are of 2020, 2021. And after that, you've had the biggest from the transport sector is BS6. And then you've had EVs. So we don't know what has been the impact of these 2. So in terms of EVs, in the next few years, now you have EVs in the personal vehicle segment. They are expected, and they are there in the commercial bus segment in some cities. It is expected to grow in the trucking segment. It's right now in the LDVs, it will expected to grow in the HCVs. So one needs to check if you have electric HCVs, what is the change in your non-exhaust emissions? Because at time you're happy, your overall air quality will definitely come down, which is great. But how does one see the non-exhaust emissions part? So that is not tracked yet. You want to know, we can track it, but yeah.
My larger question is from the perspective that in the NCAP, the cities are claiming funds and doing certain regulations, certain changes. Those interventions are leading to some impact, assuming there are no other interventions on any other part. So at the end, there are 2 or 3 biggest things in the transport which are happening. If we don't see any changes, what are we, how are we even tracking? Where are we establishing the impact of any of these interventions, and where do you think are the next set of financing that is going to happen in the air pollution, especially non-exhaust emissions space management?
Hello, yeah. So the first idea is you need to identify that there are non-exhaust emissions. You need to address them, and means you need to monitor them and characterize them. Right now, we know there is road dust component, but do we really know the nature of non-exhaust emissions? Arpan talked about markers. Silica, right, is a marker, but what about tire brake wear? Do we know the markers of that? There is advanced instrumentation. So for tailpipe emissions, the markers are of diesel, which is carbon.
No, yeah.
For non-tailpipe emissions, the marker is chlorine. It's from tires. The marker is sulfur. It's from tires. Our current transport does not have sulfur. So if you see sulfur into the transport emissions, you know it is from the non-exhaust emissions. The second thing is, we are also ignoring these particles are going to create secondary pollutants. So that chemistry needs to be established. So there needs to be an entire branch of studies that need to happen, and how much of these are going to contribute to secondary PM 2.5 formation. Once that is done, you will know which vehicle classes will emit the most, and thereby you identify super emitters. And based on that, you make financing. For example, let's say if you're demarcating roads and you know a heavier truck will cause more resuspended emissions, do not allow them in residential areas.
And do we have established super emitters already by the...
We have established for
Research?
tailpipe. Yes, we have published.
Yeah.
We have established them for tailpipe emissions.
What about the...
Non-tailpipe, right now, no. For that, you need these markers. What are your markers for non-tailpipe emissions? For tailpipe, it's clear. It's black carbon. It's PM 2.5. It's NOx. What are the markers? So right now, I'm a chemist by training. So it's chlorine. It is sulfur. It is some other variables. Those have to be clearly identified, have to be studied. And
when
then
we look at the non-exhaust emissions ka breakup, 70-80% is dust, silica. Only 10 to 20% variation is between the road wear and tear or tire or brake wear and tear. Can we establish robust enough specifications for tire or brake pads so that we have lesser wear and tear from them, and also they are non-carcinogenic and lesser harmful? So have we not have changed our specifications to them yet?
so far, no, because the tire industry it's not easy to make those changes, because then you will be replacing. So making a tire robust, also using non-carcinogens, will take time. So that's one. But what you can easily do is fixing your roads. So apart from your regular paving and sweeping, there are also specific suppressants,
Materials,
dust suppressants that are available that will work for specific kind of chemicals. So those can be tried. And I don't think NCAP specifically every city is using a lot of MRSMs, that is machine sweepers, but we are not using enough dust suppressants to sort of help that part as well. So,
and do you have established cost-benefit analysis or cost to implementation or impact analysis to say that dust suppressants are a way to go?
dust suppressants right now have been tried in pilots, but we've just established 64% of the 20,000 crores spent till 2024. So that's about 12,000 crores has been spent. I'm sure we can take out 1,000 crores for that and try and see whether it works or not. At least try it on the roads that
So
have
even
been
that
most
has to
prone.
be established yet.
That has
and
not been established
not
yet.
been
But there is a way to do this. And the tire industry can then be, like we mandated the auto industry to move to cleaner engines, move to cleaner tires.
Correct, true. Namita, I just want to pull you in the conversation from two sides, right? We are still debating the models, we are still debating the, not the models per se, but we are still debating that enough is left undone, right? There is still not clear establishment to what will work to how much level, what is the impact that I'm gonna go. As a city, I don't want to know about the modeling details, but as a city, we want to know what is it that we do which has a clear impact. You already deal in the world of sensors. In your experience, what is that best standardized method or sensor specification that will take care of the two problems that we have already heard?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me here, Imani. So far, the cities have primarily prioritized regulatory grade sensors or BAMs, right? Unfortunately, they are very ineffective when it comes to measuring the impact or contribution of such sources at a very sort of local, hyper-local space. In fact, BAMs are usually set up in areas which are far away from local sources because their goal is to measure ambient air quality and not specific source emissions. Low-cost sensors, on the other hand, really enable sort of rapid, cost-effective deployment at intersections and high-traffic road area, leading to real-time hyperlocal data on air quality metrics. In terms of what to measure, as it's clear, PM 2.5 and PM10 tend to be sort of the primary pollutants from non-emission sources. And low-cost sensors have actually been very effective in measuring PM 2.5 and PM10. PM 2.5 is very proven. PM10, laser scattering sensors have suffered from, because they're usually they compute PM10 from PM 2.5. But more recently, with the advent of OPCs or optical particle counters, we are seeing much better PM10. In fact, we recently did a co-location study for BMC at IIT Delhi, and we saw really good correlations for PM10 as well. So I think, PM 2.5 and PM10 is something we can measure very well with low-cost sensors. In addition, some of the issues we're talking about, I think if we also monitor like NO2 with these sensors, and we can actually try to better understand the correlation with tailpipe emissions, and then be able to distinguish the sources, which is basically tailpipe versus non-tailpipe by looking at the NO2, at any particular time. In addition, one of the other major issues is whether, the pollution is coming from local sources or from nearby sources, right? And this is why we're monitoring wind speed and wind direction at these places can also really help understand how much of it is local versus coming from other sources and which airsheds this is coming from. So in general, I think LCS can actually help solve a lot of these issues.
So just a added question, and I'm sorry for cutting you in between, but the low-cost sensors are still not as widely used as they could have been, and they have a level of restriction in being accepted by state departments and CPCBs. What is it that we can fix there to have a larger network of these low-cost sensors as well as have a larger acceptance at the state level?
So, I think things have been changing a lot in the last couple of years, especially in the construction sector. We are seeing, BMC, TMC, now Pune Municipal Corporation, DPCC, right, come up with plans which are based on low-cost sensor-based monitoring. They've actually come up with systems where they're requiring co-location with, the IITs or, specific sort of known institutes and proper co-location reports before these sensors can be approved for deployment, which I think has worked really well. In a lot of the projects we've done with, for example, IIT Kanpur or even with GMDA, which actually we've been doing for 5 years, surprisingly, when most states have not come forward and worked with us on LCS. We have co-located our sensors with BAMs continuously over the last 5 years so that, we every quarter we share reports of the co-location data with them to make sure that, they can be confident about the accuracy of the sensors. and then also use our data to calibrate the networks, right? So I think there's a lot of progress here. This has been slow. I mean, we've been working on this for the last 9 years, and repeatedly the government has had concerns around LCS, which is, valid, because honestly, calibration is an issue with these sensors, and ensuring, high accuracy is really important. But I think this is changing, and I think the more we can have such models of, properly validating sensors from sensor manufacturers and making sure that they are working well, this can actually come into the mainstream.
Professor Sanjay, I'm going to jump the discussion here. There is one of the important questions which was raised in the presentation and again in the discussion. There is a growing push for electrification, which is a clean tailpipe situation. But at the same time, as we have observed, that one-to-one vehicle replacement and specification in the category and segment, there is an increase in the weight. And that is anywhere near 10 to 15% of the ICE vehicle. The EV is heavier by 10 to 15%. Now there is a trade-off here, and how do you see that trade-off panning out further? Because now we know that heavier vehicles will resuspend more dust, right? Non-exhaust emissions are likely to increase. At the same time, non-exhaust emissions are 10 times in terms of quantum of the tailpipe emissions. How do cities, especially given the kind of modal shares we have and the way we are progressing towards private vehicles, how do we manage the situation?
I think I'm actually learning quite a bit, by the way. I think if one were to look at it in terms of, talked about resuspension, it happens more probably in the congested area because the speeds drop, your rate, the concentration goes up. Now that becomes an ideal case for a low emission zone delineation. I think time probably now has come that if one were to talk about climate action plan, I think we need to, apart from the technological solution, which all of you are domain expert, I think the planners on the other side, along with the government, have to now come on board because time is just going away. Let's agree to it. और ये time वापस नहीं आएगा. We are all very clear. What I think, and I probably would even go to the extent that even if a pilot is a failure, we need to actually learn from a pilot. We have not attempted any pilot study ever. And I have been teaching to my students flexi yards and staggering, all those things which have been attempted outside globe. We have not made an attempt, and I'm so disappointed at what is the hitch of not actually doing it, doing a pilot in some of the areas where it can be tested, and then we can actually take it forward. Now coming back to your EV question, it's still, the adoption is still in the process. We are still away. We have been doing a lot of work on freight EV adoption. I know Z is going to come. How long it is going to come, we still are, it's very hazy. We can't have a very rosy picture that it'll come so fast. I don't think it'll come so fast because the supporting ecosystem has to really be in place first. And freight is a very, very cost-cutting, it's like a single fleet operator. Himani, you know it. And I want to know that, am I going to earn my salary at the end of the day? As simple as that. Until as you have a kind of an aggregation of the freight operators, maybe the large companies might take a lead towards electrifying their fleet, the fleet. But the small, which accounts for almost 80% of our fleet ownership, I think it'll take some time. So I think that point I am not so much worried upon. But what I am more worried upon is, let's look into the urban setting. Delhi is I would call it as an outlier. Let's agree. जैसे चेयरमैन साहब ने बताया कि we are landlocked. हमारी मुसीबत हमारे शहर की नहीं है, हमारी मुसीबत बाहर की है, और वो मुसीबत नहीं कम होगी. No matter what you, it is very, very difficult. It's a very, very challenging task. But I think somewhere down the line, the government have to be sensitized. I think that is what is the worry part. The government is not really sensitive about how serious the problem is. And I think there the academia, the research think tank should actually come out with with probably some test model, which I would call it, on their own, that if this is the area, even if you were to take an LEZ and demonstrate that through a simulation exercise, after carrying through the process of the stakeholder consultation and whatever, what is the effectiveness of it? I think the politician, let's be very open.
So we have some interesting numbers crunched last year, wherein we saw that travel demand management strategies, so say non-motorized transport, increase of public transport, which eventually leads to decrease of the private vehicles, right, is far more effective in at least the exhaust emissions and very likely in the non-exhaust emissions as well. So do you think that travel demand management strategies to manage the overall vehicles on the road and vehicle kilometers on the road will be far more effective than any other technological solutions, including EVs, especially from the tailpipe, non-tailpipe emissions
To
perspective?
me, I think both of them have to go hand in hand. We can't say only planning will do the solution, because your asset has to be really environment friendly. So the EV will have its own, and it's part of the mission program of the Government of India. So you just cannot do away with it. But what I'm trying to say is, while we keep speaking about TDM, we have not had a pilot done at area level. We talk about TDM, we talk about carpooling, for example. I remember 15 years back, the Secretary Transport Department Delhi, we sat together to work out a carpooling scheme to be launched by the government. To be launched by the government, a draft paper was already drafted, and till there, it is not there. Why do we leave carpooling to a private sector, informal arrangement? Why can't the government actually take a lead and have a carpooling system in place where people then can benefit? So I think the leader has to be the government. I'm very clear. Until the government builds the cat, you are not going to get what we are talking. But yes, the government would want to know. I'm sure any decision maker would want to know, suppose if I want to implement, tell me the benefit of it.
Exactly.
I think that is where the academia, the think tank has to be ready.
Megha, we are going to jump the discussion, the same that Professor is speaking about. What is it that will have the maximum impact, and whether ICCT has modeled some of these nuances for the non-exhaust emissions? Not tailpipe chhod diya abhi humne, not in this session.
Okay, thank you so much, Himani. So I think it's a very, very valid concern that is being raised, that EVs are heavier because of the heavy weight batteries that they carry. So a couple of points there. I think we need to understand that any vehicle which is heavier, whether it's EV or ICE, is going to emit more non-tailpipe emissions. So it's irrespective of the technology. And if we look at, say, trend in personal vehicles, there's an increasing SUV ownership. So I think what we really need to address here is the challenge that we are, generally shifting to bigger vehicles, more powerful engines. So how can we really curb that? For instance, we have best practices like, Paris has imposed massive taxes on SUV ownership. So can we do something about it? The other point about EVs, I think what we are probably neglecting when we are comparing tailpipe and non-tailpipe emissions is that the real world tailpipe emissions are massively higher than what our emission factors, etc., standards say. So, I mean, at ICCT, we've did.
So the true study we know about, and since I'm not gonna get the conversations in the tailpipe side, do you have something similar on the non-exhaust emissions?
Okay, you caught me there, but yeah, I have a couple of more points to make here. So EV technology is also evolving, and with better charging infrastructure in place, better battery chemistries, and better, more efficient EVs, the expectation is that EVs are also going to become lighter in future. So we should not, we should also consider that. And maybe, just...
Yeah, unless they're forced to, right? Unless there are some pricing or taxation mechanisms to force them to. Otherwise, my aspirations for SUV are not going away.
Absolutely. I mean, I do completely. So that is where TDM comes in. That is where better fuel efficiency standards come in. So I think regulations will remain a strong tool.
So does ICCT Global or ICCT India have detailed nuances established for, say, at what speed, how much more dust will be resuspended? So let's say 20 kmph on the same road with same vehicle versus on same silt load versus the same situation but a speed at 30 kmph or 40 kmph? Do you have those kind of details
I think we
available?
have not looked at non-tailpipe as of now because tailpipe still remains a key concern given its.
And why is it so? Because now that we have learned it's 10x, are we going to go in that
I
direction?
think that is not aligned with how we kind of estimate non-tailpipe emissions. Also, I think another point that I think which we briefly touched upon is that I think a lot of discussion is going around on road dust. But do we really understand what it constitutes? Like we've been talking about how much of it is really toxic and non-toxic. Because if it is non-toxic and it is not really affecting our health, is it something that we should be really spending so much investment on? So what is it that is
Proportion
really
of it which is mixed in the
exactly what
harmful
is it,
side. Yeah.
Exactly. So what is it that is really making us sick and ill? And do we really need to kind of relook at our investments and really invest where it is hurting the most?
Yeah, that
So I
is
think
where
that-
the markers are not something that we are still able to crack. Yeah, great. Great. So I'm going to get back to that quickly. We have Mr. Mahendra Kumar here from NRCTC. Sir, you have had large projects on both, now that the construction is happening at such a scale. So how do you manage the non-exhaust emissions at your site? What have been the learnings around that? And then can you also draw what kind of institutional structure? And NCRTC is also at a regional level, right? So you cut across the states' borders and then cities and districts' borders. How have been that institutional framework been effective in the management and implementation of the cross-cutting, cross-border projects?
Thank you, Dr. Himani, respected chairperson for this session, my eminent speakers, my colleagues. I'm from NCRTC, and what our eminent speakers discussed, we have tried to follow all the requirements for containment of the PM 2.5 or PM 10 or the various gases, SO2 or chlorine or gases. So how we did that, I'll just tell you. Our first corridor, basically the functional plan 2032 identified 3 corridors. The first corridor was Delhi-Meerut, on which the work is going on. It is a 82-kilometer long corridor. The work is almost complete. Out of 82, 55 kilometers is already operations and passengers are using it. And balance is also ready, and shortly we will commission the full corridor. So during construction, since being a massive construction, there was all PM 2.5 or PM 10 or the various gases. So one of the things that we did was very particular that we had anti-smoke guns, which took care of the PM 2.5 and all the requirements which was for containment of the dusts, like covering of the sand, covering of the mud, or covering of with the green clothes, then sprinkling. All that was very meticulously followed during the project. And then I would like to inform the audience that during the GRAP days, I think if I remember correctly, 2.5 or 3 years back, when our work was stopped, since we were following all these things, we approached the Honorable Supreme Court, and after we gave the methods that we were practicing, and the team from the Honorable Supreme Court came and visited the sites, and they allowed us to continue with the works, but with the caution that whatever we are following, we continue to do with that. And that is how we have been able to complete our entire corridor within the stipulated time and cost. So that is one thing we have been always following. And even today, we have been regularly monitoring the air quality for PM 2.5, PM 10 or SO2 or NOx or carbon monoxide, and what are the steps, whatever are the steps required, Additionally, we are following that. So these are, we have generally followed throughout. And regarding the framework, what you said, I feel what Dr. Atri said, we need institutional partnerships among CAQM, CSIR, CRRI, and SPA, which comes to my mind, for science-based standardized road designs, talking for the roads and dust mitigation measures. We also need to use the digital tools for live data on road dust and maintenance needs. Some of them we are following. Greening sidewalks, I think this is an important part which we have been doing. And even if anybody happens to travel in the Delhi-Meerut corridor, in the midway, in the median of the road, you will see that we have provided greening throughout, which helps to absorb the dust. So this is one of the things which I'll say that this has to be done. Then enforcing best construction practices. I think this comes from the legal framework, what my earlier colleagues were also saying. And public awareness, then to use pulled car, my other colleague also said. And then walking to the bus stands or metro stations or the RRTS stations, of course, the public transport system has to be made according so that the person can walk 500 meters and reach there.
Thank you so much, sir. I'm just jumping the question to Rajneesh. Rajneesh, how do you suggest that, like sir has suggested, Mahinder sir, there is so much that is needed and there are complementary pieces to the whole, transport mobility aspect. Now, where AFT has been funding some interesting projects, we know, Rahi is one such Amritsar project that we know of where you focused on the exhaust emissions, right? Are there other projects that AFT strategically funded where non-exhaust emissions have equally been focused? What has your been larger strategy on that?
Thanks, Himani. In terms of our larger strategy, frankly, our focus has been to avoid NEE. And for that, very simply, we have been focusing on financing of metro projects. So till date, we have financed 6 metro projects. This is the actual TDM. When I say actual TDM, EV on road is an EV on road. It is causing congestion. You can have as many expressways as you want, but in the end, there will be a bottleneck. So that is exactly the problem. And secondly, when we finance a metro, we ask them about environment and social safeguard standards. This is exactly what Mr. Mahinder was saying. Are you covering these things or are you sprinkling the water? Thirdly, when you're implementing a metro, widening the roads is counterproductive. Come on, you want people to get into MRTs and then you're giving them the wide roads. I mean, you are taking external financing, you are taking debt and creating another problem. This is exactly what you don't need to do. This is the problem. And this is how we address it. Department of Economic Affairs of India now clearly says to us, what is the finance plus element? For us, it's called value-added element, and that is multimodal integration. Now, with Metro Rail Policy 2017, what has happened is there has been a focus on MMI. See, I can admit that we are the best in terms of civil engineering. We can put metros in the fastest manner. But as everybody over here is saying, you need to walk to the metro station. We guys go to Europe and all other Western countries and keep on praising them. But you don't want to walk over here. The second thing is, you have payments, but these are encroached upon. You need to set up regulations. There is an Americanized term called complete streets, but rightly so, we have now CAQM road action plan. Do that. Fourthly, while coming over here, as soon as I got down from the Dwarka Expressway, I had all the potholes. You have all the apps now, like for Haryana, we have Mari Sadak. You can actually geotag it and get it done. First, become sustainable. We can become smarter at the later stage. At least be sustainable. Unless you have the life in you, you can't be smart. So this is exactly what we address in our identification files, meaning what we write when we submit a project to our board. And once it reflects upon the value addition, only then it is passed for financing. Therefore, metros and NMT project, which we financed in Kochi, but Himani, that project was 27 million euros for a period of 5 years. Unfortunately, only 13 million euros was disbursed because of this ongoing problem for last 28 years of having unified, so-called unified metropolitan transport authority, sitting across the table without egos and working in a holistic manner for city.
Rajni is very nicely spoken, and you have given us two cues. So one is how to be smart without, investing so much into that smartness. Karthik, we have the pleasure of having Karthik Ganeshan here. He has worked extensively on air quality monitoring and fixing up using logical, radical things. So Karthik, quickly to you, how can we leverage public engagement and use of the public complaint portal that we already have to manage and then add on this conversation of non-exhaust emissions management?
Thank you, Himani. I mean, I'm really glad Rajneesh spoke before me. I think he's basically placed all our angst collectively in the middle for us to present to, I think, Dr. Atri and everyone else who can take it up with government. On public, I mean, on these sort of crowdsourcing portals, for instance, whether it's SDMC, MCD 311 or Green Delhi app, my experience has been that in using these, you feel like you are one of maybe a handful that's complaining, and you don't have a sense of there is actually a big community that's out there that's also equally frustrated with the way things are. So one of the things that I've always advocated for is, can we have a sense of who in your area is actively looking at these issues, so that you can actually collectively make a stand to the government on, well, these are the people who actually are participating in this. Can I approach them to collectively come up with a solution? What I find is that in places where there is some sort of collective bargaining, where there is representation in numbers, government typically is not able to sort of, put you aside and say, I will not look at you. If it's one complaint at a time, every one of them is acting independently, and at the end of the day, it's sort of like wearing them out, right? There is sort of attrition happens, and they aren't able to follow up. Whereas when you realize that there are 15 people in your area that are potentially complaining about, for instance, whether it's potholes, whether it's C&D dumping, which ultimately comes onto the roads and then becomes, non-exhaust emissions. I live, for instance, in a university. I've been asking, there are 2,000 people that actually use that particular stretch of the road from Govindpuri Metro to Okla Phase 3. And I said, if 2,000 people collectively knew that, okay, this is the way in which I do it, and if 2,000 people reported, and if there was this massive spike in complaints, I'm sure this last mile stretch would have been fixed. But instead, what do we end up having, right? We actually have a whole bunch of, motorized vehicles, which are basically the autos, and now increasingly the electric rickshaws, because people just don't want to walk that last mile. So I think democratizing the information that comes up from these apps in a way that people realize that there are more people out there that want to sort of, that are looking at this, is one way of making them feel empowered. And I feel that that is completely lacking. Unless you have the reach with your complaint. I mean, with all the access that we have to CAQM and DPCC, right? I have not managed to get a massive stretch of road that has actually been used as a Malba dumping ground. So you can imagine what the plight of the average citizen is, right? So I think improving that collectivization is there. I do want to make a point regarding what Megha has said, as well as others have highlighted. So it is very important to look at the constituent of that PM 2.5, right? If, for instance, if indeed it is silica, while of course, breathing in any amount that's in PM 2.5 format is, if it is of organic origin, we do know that its oxidative potential and the impact on the lungs is going to be much more. So I feel like what Arpan has presented, while we acknowledge that it is early stage, right, to look at what is the PM 2.5 fraction, what is the oxidative potential of non-exhaust, especially in the India context, is absolutely important. I mean, and I think there have been studies that have talked about oxidative potential of PM 2.5, but they've been far too dispersed. So maybe we have to look at how do we come up with a sense of what is the oxidative potential, for instance, of non-exhaust components, and then maybe present this. So yeah, this is what I will say on the use of apps and engaging people to complain about non-exhaust, which effectively comes from, I guess, poor road quality and construction. Thanks.
So, and another question that I had related to what Rajneesh has been saying, sir, Mahendra sir, how do we leverage the institutional structures more effectively, right? I mean, it's not a city problem anymore, it's not a municipal corporation area problem, but at the same time, the implementation happens at that level. So NCRTC, for example, enjoyed that institutional power, authority, and then financing, you know. How do we learn and leverage something similar with CAQM for fixing up the exhaust and non-exhaust problems in Delhi or in NCR, Delhi and NCR?
Before going for the institutional framework, what I would like to say that for any project or any system, when we conceive, from the design stage, we have to be very careful. As Arpan also showed in his presentation, that basically we have gone in for electric vehicles. Now the weight has increased. So increasing the weight again causes the dust. So how to control it? So this somehow we have to give enough time for planning. And when we are conceiving it, like I'll just take it with the example of NCRTC and metros as a whole. Earlier I was in Lucknow Metro, and prior to that I was in Delhi Metro. So what we have been doing, see, the in metros or in NCRTC, there is no exhaust, there is no tailpipe. So everything is on electric. So there is no emission from the exhaust. All the emissions are from the non-exhaust systems. So now how to control that? Reducing weight. See, the conventional railways, they have an axle load of 25 tons, slightly technical, but again I'll come back. So how to reduce this weight? So from the very beginning, we had in the design, and we went in for stainless steel car bodies or lighter components, so that the load is reduced to 16 tons to 17 tons. This reduces the dust from the rail wheel interaction. So this is one. So design is equally important. Then you said about dust being generated from brakes. So all the metros, NCRTC also, we have regenerative braking in our system. So there is no dust from that. So whatever would have gone in as heat energy or the dust particles coming from the brake pads, the same traction motor of the train works as a generator, and the energy which would have been lost otherwise goes back to the system and is being used by the other systems. This is true for our lifts also. This is true for our high-rise escalators also. So these are some of the changes that we have done from the very beginning. One more thing that I would like to add. As of now, our 11 stations are under operations. So from the day one, when we were conceiving the project or designing or floating the bids, we were very clear that we need platinum certifications, which is highest rating for a green building from IGBC. So that requires a lot of things to be done. How are you going to dispose the waste? How are you are going to dispose the concrete waste, glass waste? So all those things you have to do it from the very beginning, and we followed all that. And I take pride in saying that 5 of my stations have been already certified as platinum certifications. 2 of my receiving substations buildings, they are also platinum certified, and balance stations are under evaluation by IGBC. 2 of my stations are already which have been evaluated, and they are net zero operations. Means we have provided solar plant on our rooftop, and then they are net zero, already net zero operations. So the most important thing is, whenever we conceive a project, whenever we conceive a system or work, the first thing is to do adequate planning, and these things have to be thought from the very beginning. It's very difficult to implement it at a later stage once you have gone ahead with the project. This was one important thing. Even further, we are working on it. Right now, we have a very small 10% of solar power for our systems, but we are going to set up a plant which we are already in process, and 60% of the energy we'll have from solar plants for our entire corridor. So these things, steps we are taking. Further, we are also thinking that could we go for battery storage. Of course, battery storage was not economical, so we have not gone in for that as of now. Regarding the policy and regulations, as already discussed, enhanced regulatory oversight through updated guidelines, which sir has already said. CAQM is already setting the framework. CPCB and other state PCBs can further institutionalize such dust mitigation measures, including requirements for environmental audits and digital reporting of dust control operations. These are some of the things which come to my mind. And of course, enforcing the regulatory norms and mandating adoption of best practices. This is another very important thing which I feel must be followed.
Himani, if I may come in with, here, Karthik, sorry, here.
Yeah.
Sorry, no, just to, since we have Dr. Atri here, and and I feel there's a whole range of experts, right? I wanted to present a request as, and I'm sure if people feel differently about this, we've been looking to understand, Dr. Atri, what is the impact of the mechanisms that are currently being used, whether it is MRS, whether it is, misting, whether it's spraying, because unless we actually evaluate the performance of this, what we're finding is that, in fact, there was recent research that's coming out from China that's saying that spraying and misting actually is possibly causing more harm in terms of enabling the formation of PM 2.5 from constituents that otherwise would not. So without actually evaluating the impact and how long-lasting it is, it feels like a lot of cities, and you said that let's forget about NCR. Absolutely, let's forget about NCR. Everybody else is actually learning from what NCR is doing to manage their problems, because these are becoming problems in other cities as well. So if NCR can actually sort of put in place a measurement mechanism for how sustained is the improvement after, for instance, an MRS has actually gone on a stretch. How sustained is the improvement after a misting machine has actually traversed a stretch? Does it last for 3 hours? Does it last for 6 hours? Or is it only for 30 minutes? Unless we have those in place, we find that there will be more and more resources that will actually have to be deployed to have consistent, improvement or settling of PM 2.5 over the course of a day. So if you could request the technical agencies or mandate them that, before you ask for the next tranche of spending on these issues, whether it's procuring MRSs or deploying these devices, we should definitely go ahead and, sort of assess what has been the impact, how sustained is it, and for every rupee that's being spent, for how long are we able to actually reduce it? If you can enable that, we would really appreciate it. We understand that these require some time, but it also, I think, requires the mindset that, let's put in place mechanisms which actually serve us in the long run. I hope you agree, and if anybody else feels like this was not a valid suggestion, please do speak up, because we'd like to also ensure that this voice is heard by the CAQ. Apologies for butting in, but I hope that this was a useful intervention. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, I agree with you. Any evaluation of the actions that's required, whether it is as MRSM or anti-smoke guns, we will be doing this. And a couple of just things, because lots of suggestions have come in between. I mentioned in the start that NCR is very complex region when 30% of the pollution is coming from the Delhi, 30% from NCR surrounding areas, and 30% from even outside India also, outside NCR region, including Pakistan and Arabia also. So we need to have a multi-pronged strategy, because sources are different. And what Karthikeyan mentioned, evaluation of the actions, because they are cost intensive, that's very important. And one thing I want to share that we supported a project for Delhi Niri, and they come out with a suggestion, particularly dust present. Even I invite any comments from all the participants. If anybody has any solution, particularly for the dust present, CAQM will welcome that, because they came out with the recommendations, and not recommending anything that this should be the first priority for the dust present, and it should be last priority. But because they may have biological impacts, they may have chemical impacts, and other impacts also. But we need some of the dust present, so that water, if it is sprinkled, it may be drained out or evaporated in a couple of hours. And if this water can sustain, say, for 6, 8, 10 hours, definitely there will be much impact of those present. But at present, what you mentioned, that MRSM and anti-smoke guns, they have the impact. Because if, say, humidity is very less, or say even rain is very, very less, very light or drizzle rain, sometimes it aggravates the air quality, it increases. But if rain is much more in the quantity and like that, and this wash out effect is there, we need to evaluate all those effects. But up to the time a very, I should say, standards method is coming, we need to look into that, we need to evaluate that. And one thing, last point I just want to mention, Dr. Gulia mentioned about various studies, source apportionment studies, but those were mainly having data up to 2018. And most of the actions or directions came after 2021, like coal is banned in whole NCR except power plants. Out of the 240 industrial areas, now 231 have PNG connections. So we have cleaner fuels for the industries all over the NCRs. Impacts of these, they are not in any of the studies. Keeping that in mind, we came out with a framework in April, and now mandated a study to CPCB to carry out new studies for emission inventory and source apportionment, say in next 12 to 15 months, so that it can be the baseline for all of us to take further actions based on the quality data and the reality of the situations. I stop here. Thank you.
Just I would like to one point to Karthik's. In absence of such regulations, or in absence of such rules or something like that, what we did, we were regularly monitoring the air quality using all the systems, anti-smoke guns, water tanker sprayers, covering, additionally spraying water by the pipes. So, and we were regularly monitoring. So monitoring the air quality live is extremely important. And based on that, if the frequency of anti-smoke gun is more required, or more anti-smoke guns are required, that is what we did. Yeah. That is, I am restricting myself to my construction site. Yes.
At city scale, exactly. At city scale, that's impossible.
Yes.
You're doing it because
I fully agree. Yeah. I fully agree.
Whereas we are, with every passing day, we are resorting to more and more of that. So that is definitely problematic. I mean, and which is where I think we're learning from construction sites. I wish we do it in construction sites so that it doesn't spill over. But then now that it's spilled over because many sites aren't following it, proper construction demolition, we are now taking construction site practices to the city, which is not feasible at all. In fact, from November 1, we're supposed to have these installed on rooftops of properties which are 3,000 square meters. We find that to be a very resource-intensive activity with water use. And I'm already hearing that in Sangam Vihar and in other parts of southwest Delhi, there is severe water stress. Right? So how are we basically able to then look at the water availability for this, especially potable grade water? So we hope that the CAQM as well as GNCTD will take into account the efficacy of these measures and then recommending what the rest of the city needs to do. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, just one point here, like clean construction technologies, both techno-managerial solutions as well as the solutions what you have mentioned, because all these things to be looked into the integrated manner.
So I just wanted to call out a couple of things and plug for LCS here. I mean, I think LCS has been really helping with clean construction. But like IT Delhi recently did a study using LCS where they basically evaluated the effect of paving and cleaning up roads using difference approach, the resolution of long-term issues such as paving of unpaved roads, repairing of potholes, and fixing broken footpaths and dividers was found to reduce PM 2.5 concentration by 26% in Jahangir, Puri, 15.7% in Rohini, and 15.3% Karol Bagh. So I think there's a huge opportunity here to actually monitor these interventions before they are made regulations. The other plug I just wanted to quickly make is that now, new technology has come up where you can do real-time source apportionment with LCS, which is hugely valuable, right? One of the big things I'm hearing again and again is that our source apportionment studies are so old that, and also source apportionment is not something you can do one time, right? The compositions are changing throughout the year. And so real-time source apportionment, which really gives you data for the entire year to understand how the contributions change in different parts of the year, are really invaluable to help create the right strategies. So, I just feel like there's so much opportunity to leverage LCS in creating data-driven policies, which, the government has just not invested in.
So the floor is open if there are any quick comments, especially on the side of solutions. Those are very, very welcome.
Construction is only a minor contributor towards the total pollution or pollutants getting generated, because that is in the range of 5 to 7% that you showed in your presentation. And then on the on-road dust non-pipe pollution, again, that contribution is not very much. You tried to bifurcate that also, but percentage I could not see in your presentation. I think that would also be in the range of only less than 20%. So in view of that, when we come for the pollution control measures, and when we invoke GRAP, then the first thing we put ban on construction activities. I, being civil engineer, doing construction day in, day out, so I feel very hurt, especially in an organization like NCRTC. We are taking all the measures, and we have been doing construction and were allowed even construction activities in GRAP 1, 2 or 3 stage. So any studies further in that, and why we should resort to immediately stopping the construction work instead of taking proper measure on the control on the road dust and road pollutions? Any comments on that, or any studies being carried out on that?
I think construction is stopped only in GRAP stage 3, and last year we gave many exceptions that these works can be carried out. Because some of them, like NCRTC, Metro, where we were very clean construction, but if you go to many construction areas, lots of the problems are there. Dust is within the construction area, dust is on the roads, and so much dust generation is there, airborne is there. There is a real problem. I mentioned if we can, we are for construction and development, but it should be clean construction, not non-clean construction.
Yeah, that I agree, sir, with you, that it has to be clean construction. First, we have to follow all the pollution controlling measures at our construction sites.
So, if I can also come in, sir. So, in our other measures, so we have actually run a pilot on construction site, and we have actually measured on ground how PM 2.5 and PM 10 concentration reduced after if we follow all the clean construction guidelines. So that study also we have done at CW. So I can share this one with you and sir both, and I will share the link for this one also with you, sir. So if you have any further comments on that, please.
We have one more question. Yeah, please go ahead.
Hi, I'm Parin Visaria. I'm from ITDP India. Not a question, but a point to reinforce for controlling non-exhaust emissions. And the point, Himani, that you made on the need for travel demand management measures, I think that's where we need to work on. a lot of grab plans I've seen, they have actually used quadrupling of parking fees. And that is something we really need to now get it implemented, test it out. We have parking policies, but still there's, cities are not charging based on demand. So the real work on demand management is still something that, and something like a body like CAQM, and the GRAP also includes it, it'll be something to take into consideration.
Sure, yeah, point is well noted. Are there any questions or quick comments, sir, please?
So when we talk about road, we had that there is a issue of silica content in the dust, which is causing problem. So why don't we make a regulation to have night sweeping only, from 1 in night to 4 in night? Because what I see is during the grab periods, parallel things are going on. Sprinkling is also taking place, and dusting of that mechanized dusting or mechanized sweeping is also taking place. Then the other thing is, one of the participant told that even if you use EV, that is going to come on the road, and more of the usage of SUVs. So why don't we try that if we lose the capacity, seating capacity of the vehicle, we have to say penalize that. Because if you travel from Delhi to Gurugram, you'll find all 5, 6, 7-seater cars which are being driven only with a single passenger. So we'll have to think some legislative supports that take it as a crime that we are using such big SUVs and a single person is traveling in that.
In some Eastern countries, like if one person is car, in car toll is 1,000 rupees. 2 are there, it is 800. 3 is there, 600. So these are graded things. Let's see what happens in future. We are in democracy. We'll have to be very in a collaborative way, not like can issue any direction.
Sir, I think the time has come to push in more of pricing and restrictive strategies, and it's high time that we curtail, especially the person vehicles. Yeah.
The legislators themselves should stop buying SUVs. They are the ones who are buying most of the SUVs.
सर जब हमने ये बात रखी,
So in the interest of time, and also because the lunch is being served, I'm requesting the interesting session to be closed. We have some small token of thanks and gratitude for all the panelists and the experts here. And after a quick photo and those gifts, we can proceed to the lunch, please. Please carry on to the discussions in the lunch area as well. Do not give up on the issue at all, please.
Thank you, sir. Chairman, sir, for concluding the session. Thank you, moderator, ma'am, for conducting the session so smoothly and keeping the session live. Please be of the session to kindly present the memento to our esteemed speaker in order of their appearance, and followed by the moderator as a token of our appreciation for their valuable contribution. Mr. Arpan Patra, Programming Associate, CEEW.
We can all hold it and quickly come together, please, all the panelists.
Dr. Sunil Gulia, Senior Scientist, CSIR. Mrs. Swagat Dev, Air Quality Lead, CSTEP. Ms. Namita Gupta, CEO, Ayurveda. Professor Sanjay Gupta, Professor and Head, School of Planning and Architecture. Mrs. Meghna Kumar, Senior Researcher, International Council on Clean Transportation. Sri Mahendra Kumar, Director, NCRTC. Mr. Rajni Sahuja, Head of Transport and Urban Development Division. Mr. Karthik Ganesan, Fellow and Director, Strategic Partnership. Thank you, sir. Now I would like to request Sri Mahendra sir, Director NCRTC, to kindly present a memento to Honorable Chair and Co-Chair of the session as a token of respect. Yes. Thank you, sir and madam. As we conclude, I, on the behalf of Ministry of Housing Affairs, wish to express heartfelt gratitude to all the dignitaries, speaker, and participants for their valuable contribution in making the session a success. Thank you all.